Nicola Loud is 12 years old, but if you imagine she's the product of a special music school, you'd be wrong. She goes to a comprehensive and has violin lessons with a teacher who lives nearby in the North London suburb of Highgate.
Up and down again, I said. Up and down again. Right, start again. Okay, right, let's do
Nicola's teacher is Sheila Nelson. Violin teaching is normally done on an individual basis, but for the last 15 years, Sheila has made teaching children in groups the basis of her way of teaching the violin. The results have been remarkable, and today her reputation is such that world-famous musicians like Sir Colin Davis and Alfred Brendel send their children to her. But the majority of her pupils are just local children.
I liked groups because I found that the children learned from each other much more quickly than they learned directly from me. Copying somebody almost your size, but just a little bit better, is a very good way of getting on. And also, I could say something once to 12 of them instead of saying it 12 times over, because you do say the same thing an awful lot of times if you're teaching the same skill. And also socially, the children enjoyed it, and the parents, I think, enjoyed it too. Henry. John. Everybody.
Although Sheila Nelson's way of teaching is superficially similar to the Suzuki method, her ideas are technically quite different and are derived from the work of English and European teachers of the 1930s. In 1976, she went to America to work with Paul Rolland, an academic at the University of Illinois who was working on similar lines. Professor Rolland had been commissioned by the American government to develop group teaching in schools.
To dissolve tension in the body and to help the student feel the pulse as shown in the fiddler's blues.
Rolland's ideas, although he did give some preparatory work in the books for learning to note read, and his idea is that you should note read right from the beginning, they're mainly concerned with movements, physical movements, and the physical business of getting violin playing together. Rolland uses big, sweeping, free movements, which may start off being in quite the wrong direction, and gradually refines them down until they become more controlled by the child. There's always been this great choice between which skills you develop first. And I was very much in favour of developing the physical skills first. Because I think you get great benefit from acquiring the physical skills early in life. On the other hand, I think you get great disadvantage from leaving the mental skills too late. But gradually I've amalgamated the two, and I find there's no problem at all really in doing them both at once. Right, will you all open your mouths for me? Right. Oh yes, there's a lot of teeth missing. 1, 2, 3. You've got all yours. Oh, 4.
Actually, soon it will be 8 on this stand because I've got 3 more wobblies.
3 more wobblies. Good heavens. Right. Anybody got wobblies at the back?
I've got 1 wobbly.
Oh yes.
You've got 1
Right. So we want to see your missing teeth when you sing. Okay? Right?
It's easy to see missing teeth.
No, you're quite right. Okay. Right.
I've got a big tooth.
What is the most important thing in this piece and the hardest thing?
The second
Counting. That's right. It's got lots of rest. Please, will you count aloud if you've got rests? Quietly, mind you. Quietly aloud. But really make sure that you come in. Right. Right. Are you ready? Watch out seconds that you don't come in as soon as I've finished the introduction. Here we go. Our introduction.
Unlike the Suzuki method, where children at first learn tunes by ear, Sheila Nelson teaches sight reading from the start. Of course, simply teaching children in groups isn't much use by itself. The technical skills of playing the violin often seem impossibly difficult to master. But Sheila Nelson has come up with many new ideas for dealing with them.
With the children, when they first get hold of the bow, one of the big problems is that if they hold it right at the end and they actually try and hold it up parallel to the floor, they tend to stiffen the little finger, which results in straightening the thumb because it feels very heavy to them. So Roland avoided this question right at the beginning and gave them the feel of having a really nice bow hold where the bow feels weightless, and then gradually they move down to the end. Now you don't play your violin, Philip, okay, yet. Just make sure that you've just got room for a smarty between each finger. Let me have a look, Philip. Oh, hey, look at that big smarty here. Look. An enormous smarty you've got. It's a lollipop, a whole lollipop instead of just a smarty. Good. But pop your violin up a little bit. Good. Lucy? Now, flippy floppy, because it's gone a bit stiff. There we are. There we are. Violin playing has always been taught traditionally, by as though it were in straight lines. You pull the bow down, it's parallel to the bridge, you push it up again, it stays parallel to the bridge, and it's a straight line. Your hand comes back along the same line as the way it went down. When you're string crossing, like this, you can see that the hand goes in little circles. But what's not so obvious is that when you do one note like this, the hand is still drawing a tiny circle or an ellipse. It's never goes in straight lines. Now, it's this straight line teaching which very often sets up problems in the upper arm muscles because they tend to pull in two different directions and you can get cramps and problems. I think when I went to meet Roland, I was already teaching all the children to bow in curves and circles and figures of 8 and so on. It was working perfectly nicely. What he added was the knowledge of where you get a good curve movement from, which is usually not by concentrating on what the hand is doing, but by getting the energy from the upper arm. See, if you're going to draw an easy figure of 8 movement with your hand, you don't push the hand like that. You use the upper arm to send the hand, and the hand is loose on the end, and that's what naturally good violinists do. I teach the elements of really quite advanced bowing and left-hand techniques very early, but they're, of course, totally unrefined. Emily, your hand isn't over the violin, is it? Right up here. That's the way. That's the way you do it. That's it. Spiccato bowing is the one where you draw little smiles and you let your elbow gently wave in the breeze at the back there, and you have that bow hanging easily from your hand. And they're just little short bows. And the string is allowed to ring in between. Rest, rest. Rest, rest. Lovely. Sautier bowing is one that is actually much easier to do when you've gone to the end of the bow, so we do leave that a little bit later. But we do a preparatory exercise for it. Sautier bowing is when the bow bounces of its own volition because you make a movement across the line of the bow instead of in the line of the bow. So instead of bowing in that direction, you bow actually towards the floor. Now, the preparation we do with little ones for that is that they turn the bow upside down and they learn to do this. Now that gets the whole arm moving, and it gets their whole arm moving at the speed at which they're going to learn to do sautier. But it's not really on to start teaching the sautier as such until you move the hand down to the end of the bow. That's considered quite an advanced bowing, but in fact if you've kept your arm free, it's perfectly easy to learn quite early in life. Vibrato, it is a difficult thing, I suppose, and yet some people seem to manage to do it quite easily. I think it's coming back to what I said before. The difficult thing is holding the violin easily. Now, if you're holding the violin easily, then vibrato isn't usually difficult, and often I can get to somebody to vibrato by just actually doing it to them, and then getting them to copy the feel. Right, now, so nice. Right, good, okay. But when I noticed, when I was doing it, I was holding the side of your finger away from the instrument a little bit. That's it. Very nice, good, well done. Now, third finger. Let me do that one for you. Feel your arm soft and wobbly underneath the instrument. Just let your elbow dingle-dangle down there. That's it, okay. Now, I'll do it. Well, all of my pupils come to me at least twice a week. That means, usually it is just twice a week, for a group lesson and an individual lesson. This, to me, is the ideal way of teaching, because you get the benefits of the group and you get the focus of the individual. I do now have technique classes as well, which are usually just before the group lesson, in which we do purely technical things without cellos being there. In the groups we do more reading things, singing, all that kind of thing. And we play chamber music, lots of chamber music and a little bit of orchestral music.
Sheila Nelson teaches 7 days a week, and on Sunday, every room in the house is filled with children playing or arguing, or usually both.
Just 3 bars before the end, when you've got bum, 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 usually together, look at each other like we looked at each other before that when we've got our bit together. Yeah. Okay. So you've got to actually look at each other so that you're really together.
I've got my solo.
You've got, all right, you lead us in then.
And there's no difference between that P and the PP. Yeah.
Jenny Adejan is 13. She goes to Sheila Nelson's house in the middle-class suburb of Highgate on a Sunday so that she can play chamber music with children of similar ability. But Jenny learns the cello in school in a far tougher area, Bethnal Green in the East End of London. Decay and neglect have characterised this area for over 100 years. Today, with unemployment at over 20%, it's one of the most deprived inner-city areas in the country. The crumbling Victorian terraces are being replaced by modern blocks, destroying the old communities. Globe Primary School is in the heart of Bethnal Green. Many of the children have to cope with great problems. Bad housing, poverty, broken homes and racial prejudice are part of everyday life. Not an ideal background for schooling. 12 years ago, a music teacher from Hampshire came to teach the violin in schools in this area. Maurice Coward had little idea of the task in front of him.
I can always remember the day when the inspector came in and I had a very, very good moan at him. And I just said, nothing's happening in this area. I might just as well teach in a vacuum because nothing is happening. No one's doing anything for these children. It's not going anywhere. We're not building up anything. We're not integrating anything. It doesn't mean anything. Why am I doing this?
And say the words. And music has a beat. Feel it in your feet.
I felt that there was a lot of talent here. I'd seen the work of other classes, and the thing that I liked most of all here was the energy coming from the pupils. And I knew if they could put it into other areas, they could certainly put it into music.
Music has a beat. Feel it in your feet. Keep in time and march like soldiers in the street and sit down.
The next thing that I knew was a lot of the peripatetic teachers that I knew from various other parts of London had to go to a demonstration by Sheila Nelson. And intuitively I realised this was the thing that we needed.
Feel it in your feet.
So Sheila Nelson was approached and agreed to lead a team of ILEA music teachers in a string teaching project based on her methods. It started in just 2 primary schools, where violin and cello lessons for whole classes were introduced on the timetable, just like English or maths. Slowly, from behind the drab walls of these tower blocks, children who might otherwise have thought that such things were not for them have discovered that they too have a musical talent. Today, over 1,200 children are learning instruments in the scheme. Next week, Beginners Please will look at how it works.
Make their first appearance.